The broken shield fragment pulsed with an emerald glow the moment Thalia Kask's gloved fingers brushed against its surface. She jerked back, heart racing, as the light dimmed back to dormancy. Around her, the ancient chamber remained silent, dust particles dancing in the beam of her helmet light. "Radiation reading," she whispered into her comm. "None," responded Juno, her AI assistant. "The artifact appears inert by all standard metrics." Thalia frowned, adjusting her position in the cramped excavation pit. 3 weeks of careful digging through the ruins of what scholars called the Vega 9 anomaly had finally yielded something beyond broken pottery and corroded metal. This crystalline shield fragment, roughly the size of her palm, seemed impossibly preserved for an artifact estimated to be over 6,000 years old. Log find V's 379 preliminary classification, unknown ceremonial object, she dictated, carefully lifting the fragment with her micro-tongs. Approximately 20 centimeters in diameter, composition appears crystalline but with unusual density and, she hesitated, possible reactive properties. Thalia transferred the fragment to a containment field and removed her gloves, reaching for her scanner. The excavation sponsor, Frontier Archaeological Institute, had strict protocols about artifact handling, but something about this piece pulled at her intuition. 28 excavations across 17 systems had honed her instincts about significant finds. This was different, important. A tremor suddenly rippled through the chamber, sending tiny cascades of dust from the ceiling. Thalia steadied herself against the ancient stone wall. "Seismic activity increasing," Juno reported. "Recommendation, immediate evacuation to surface level." "Not yet," Thalia murmured, eyes fixed on the fragment. 5 more minutes. She carefully deactivated the containment field, and against every protocol, touched the fragment directly with her bare hand. The world exploded into light. Flashes of strange cities with crystalline spires, battle cries echoing across star-filled skies, a woman with silver eyes raising this very shield, whole, not fragmented, against a barrage of energy weapons, feelings of love, betrayal, sacrifice. "Dr. Kask," a voice pulled her back to reality, the site's collapsing. Thalia blinked, finding herself on her knees, the fragment clutched tightly in her hand. John Away, her research assistant, was tugging urgently at her arm. "How long?" Thalia asked, disoriented. "You've been unresponsive for almost 3 minutes, Jonna replied, fear evident in her voice. "And the seismic sensors are going crazy, we need to move." Thalia nodded, quickly securing the fragment in her collection pouch as they rushed toward the narrow passage leading to the surface. The tremors were intensifying, causing ancient stonework to crack and shift around them. They emerged into the harsh daylight of Vega 9, its binary suns casting dual shadows across the barren landscape. The research camp 200 meters away was already in emergency mode, staff hurriedly packing equipment into the transport vehicles. "What's happening?" Thalia asked as they ran toward the camp. "Unknown," Jonna replied breathlessly. "Tremors started right after you found that artifact. Coincidence." Thalia's hand instinctively moved to her pouch. Something told her this was no coincidence. As they reached camp, Site Director Vance was coordinating the evacuation, his weathered face grim beneath his protective hood. "Kask, where have you been?" Orbitals reporting unusual energy signatures from this entire region. Transports leaving in 5 minutes, with or without stragglers. "Did you catalog your final finds?" Jonna asked as they hurried toward their shared quarters. "No time," Thalia replied, making a split-second decision. She quickly transferred the fragment to her personal storage case instead of the Institute's specimen containers. "I'll process it during transit." The ground lurched violently, sending equipment crashing from shelves. Outside, someone shouted that the primary transport was ready for departure. "Last call for evacuation," Vance's voice crackled over the camp's communication system. "Unidentified vessels approaching atmosphere, this is not a drill." "Unidentified vessels," Jonna echoed, eyes wide. "Pirates." Vega 9 was remote, but not immune to opportunistic raids on research outposts. Valuable artifacts could fetch enormous sums in certain markets. They rushed to the transport pad where most of the research team had already boarded the primary shuttle. As Thalia approached, Vance shook his head. "At capacity, you and Wei take the secondary transport." "It's not prepped for launch," Jonna protested. "It is now," came a rough voice from behind them. Thalia turned to find a tall man with copper-brown skin and eyes the color of storm clouds striding toward them. His weathered flight jacket and the subtle scar along his jawline marked him as no academic. "Amir Soltani," he introduced himself with a curt nod. Your institute hired my ship as secondary transport, which is fortunate because your primary just lost its starboard thruster. The main transport's engines were indeed sputtering, unable to achieve liftoff. What about the others? Thalia asked, watching the stranded researchers. Rescue vessels inbound from Meridian Station, Amir replied, already leading them toward a sleek, if somewhat battered, ship at the edge of the landing zone. They'll be fine if they stay put. We won't if those approaching vessels are what I think they are. And what's that? Jana asked as they hurried up the boarding ramp. Harvesters, Amir said grimly. They follow archaeological expeditions, waiting for discoveries, then swoop in to claim anything valuable. He gave Thalia an appraising look. Find anything worth stealing, Doctor. The fragment seemed to warm against her side, almost as if responding to the question. Nothing of particular value, she lied smoothly. As the ship's engines roared to life, Thalia strapped into one of the passenger seats. Through the viewport, she watched 3 dark vessels descending through Vega 9's atmosphere. Hold tight, Amir called from the cockpit. This might get interesting. The ship lurched upward, accelerating with surprising speed for its apparent age. As they broke atmosphere, Thalia discreetly removed the shield fragment from her case. In the darkness of space, its glow had intensified, casting emerald patterns across her fingers. And deep within her mind, a voice that wasn't her own whispered, "At last, Selene, you have returned. The cycle begins anew." Thalia looked up to find Amir watching her from the cockpit doorway, his eyes fixed on the glowing fragment. "Nothing of value, huh?" he said, one eyebrow raised. "I think you and I need to have a conversation about what exactly you found down there, Doctor." The ship shuddered as energy weapons from the pursuing vessels grazed their shields, and the ancient fragment in Thalia's hands pulsed in response. Their journey had only just begun. Amir's ship, the Wanderer, shuddered as another blast grazed its shields. He swore under his breath, his hands dancing across the control panel with practiced precision. "Can we outrun them?" Thalia asked, still clutching the shield fragment that now pulsed in rhythm with the pursuing vessel's weapons fire. "Not with conventional engines," Amir replied, throwing her a sidelong glance. "But conventional isn't exactly my specialty." He flipped a series of switches overhead, and the ship's hum changed to a deeper resonance. Quantum displacement drive, not exactly legal in regulated space but very effective for disappearing. Jana gripped her seat restraints. "You're a smuggler." "Independent contractor," Amir corrected with a half-smile, "with occasional transportation services for desperate archaeologists." The stars outside the viewport suddenly stretched into brilliant streaks as the Wanderer lurched forward at impossible speed. The pursuing ships vanished behind them, unable to match the illegal technology. When the stars settled back into pinpoints, they were drifting in an unfamiliar section of space, a massive ringed gas giant dominating the viewport. "Welcome to the Cashin Nebula," Amir announced, powering down non-essential systems. "Not on any standard charts, which makes it perfect for lying low while we figure out why those harvesters want your nothing of particular value so badly." Thalia reluctantly opened her palm, revealing the glowing fragment. "It's part of an ancient shield. From preliminary analysis, it predates known civilizations in this sector." "And it just happens to light up like a festival lantern?" Amir asked skeptically. "It wasn't doing that before I touched it," Thalia admitted. "There's something about it that seems to respond to me specifically." Jana leaned closer, scientific curiosity overriding her caution. "We should run a comprehensive analysis. The ship has basic lab equipment, right?" Amir nodded, basic being the operative word. "But before we start playing with ancient glowy things, we're making a stop. I know someone who specializes in artifacts like this." "Another smuggler?" Jana asked. "A professor, actually," Amir replied, retired forcibly. Professor Nadia Okafa's retirement home was a concealed research station embedded in a small asteroid at the nebula's edge. Despite her apparent exile from academic circles, her laboratory contained equipment that would make the Frontier Archaeological Institute envious. "The Luminari," she breathed, examining the fragment under a spectral analyzer. "I've spent 30 years searching for proof they weren't just legends." "Luminari?" Thalia asked, the word triggering another flash of memory. "Silver-skinned beings with eyes like stars, cities that sang with light." "An ancient race said to have achieved a perfect synthesis of biology and technology," Nadia explained, her dark eyes bright with excitement. "They disappeared approximately 6,000 years ago after a catastrophic war with another advanced species." The professor shifted the fragment carefully. This is a piece of what they called a soul shield, personalized defensive technology that bonded with its bearer at the genetic level. That would explain the resonance, Jana murmured. Resonance, Nadia asked sharply. Thalia hesitated, then described the visions and the voice she'd heard. It called me Selene. Nadia's expression changed from scientific interest to something more complex. There are records, fragmented, mostly dismissed as myths, of luminary consciousness transferring across timelines. They didn't view death as we do, but rather as a transition point in a longer journey. You're suggesting reincarnation, Jana said skeptically. I'm suggesting technology so advanced we can't distinguish it from something spiritual, Nadia corrected. The luminary believed consciousness was quantifiable energy that could be directed, preserved, even transferred. Amir, who had been silently observing from the doorway, finally spoke. And why would harvesters be so interested in this particular piece of ancient technology? Because, Nadia said gravely, legend holds that the soul shields, if reassembled, could reactivate dormant luminary technology scattered throughout this sector. Technology that could shift the balance of power significantly. A proximity alarm suddenly blared through the station. Nadia moved swiftly to a monitoring console. Multiple ships approaching, how did they find us? Amir's expression darkened. The fragment must be emitting some kind of signal. Or someone on your ship is, Jana said, eyes narrowing at Amir. We need to move, he replied, ignoring the accusation. Now. As they rushed toward the docking bay, Thalia felt the fragment grow warmer in her hand. The world around her began to blur, reality overlapping with another time, another place. She was running through crystal corridors, alarms echoing around her. The shield hole not broken was clutched against her chest, its surface inscribed with glowing runes. Behind her, the heavy footfalls of pursuing soldiers echoed. Selene, a man's voice called out, "This way." She turned to see a tall figure in the uniform of the enemy, beckoning her urgently toward an escape vessel. Orion, she whispered, torn between duty and desire. We can't leave. The war is lost, he replied, eyes stormy gray like gathering clouds filled with desperate resolve. But the future isn't. The shields must survive. We must survive. Thalia, Amir's voice snapped her back to the present. He had gripped her shoulders, his storm gray eyes, remarkably similar to those in her vision, filled with concern. We need to go. The parallels were too striking to be coincidence. It's you, she whispered, reaching up to touch his face. How is that possible? Confusion crossed his features, but before he could respond, an explosion rocked the station. The docking bay doors burst inward, and armed figures in sleek black armor swarmed through. Harvester elite forces, Amir hissed, pulling Thalia behind a cargo container. This is no ordinary recovery mission. Nadia and Jana had taken cover nearby, the professor clutching a data drive she'd grabbed from her lab. The eastern maintenance shaft, Nadia called out. It leads to a secondary hangar with an emergency shuttle. Amir nodded, drawing a compact energy pistol from his jacket. I'll create a distraction. The rest of you head for the shuttle. No, Thalia said firmly, surprising herself with the authority in her voice. We stay together. The fragment in her hand suddenly flared with brilliant light, expanding outward in a translucent dome that encircled their position. Energy bolts from the harvester's weapons dissipated harmlessly against its surface. The shield is reactivating, Nadia gasped. It's responding to your command. Thalia felt ancient knowledge flowing through her mind, tactical assessments, defensive formations, escape routes, all with a clarity that couldn't come from her archaeological training. This way, she ordered, leading them along a path that somehow felt familiar despite never having been in this station before. The shield moved with them, a protective bubble of emerald energy. They reached the secondary hangar without further confrontation, but Thalia could feel the strain of maintaining the shield. Her connection to it was incomplete, limited by the fragment's broken state. As they boarded the small shuttle, the shield flickered and collapsed. Thalia stumbled, caught by Amir's strong arms. That was unexpected, he said, helping her to a seat as Jana and Nadia prepared the shuttle for launch. There's more to this than just ancient technology, Thalia replied, studying his face with new awareness. I think you and I have lived this before. Skepticism crossed his features, but something deeper, recognition perhaps, flickered in his eyes. As who? Selene and Orion, a luminary warrior, and she hesitated. Zand. Her enemies, Thalia finished quietly, but also her love. The shuttle launched, breaking free of the asteroid just as harvester ships converged on the station. As they accelerated away, Nadia inserted her data drive into the shuttle's navigation system. I've spent decades collecting coordinates of suspected luminary sites, she explained. There's one in particular, a temple complex on an uncharted moon that legends suggest houses the key to understanding their legacy. The fragment pulsed in Thalia's hand as coordinates appeared on the navigation screen. Without conscious thought, she found herself saying, "The Temple of Ascension," where the cycle began. "How do you know that name?" Nadia asked, startled. Thalia met Amir's gaze, finding in it not the skepticism of before but a dawning recognition. "Because I've been there before," she answered, "we both have." As the shuttle disappeared into the nebula's swirling gases, Amir's hand found hers, his fingers interlacing with her own. The moment they touched, the fragment glowed brighter, and both gasped as shared memories of love across battle lines, of sacrifice and promise flowed between them. "I remember," he whispered, voice rough with emotion, "not everything but enough." The fragment between their joined hands began to change, the jagged edges smoothing, expanding slightly as though the broken piece was trying to heal itself. Behind them, Jana watched with scientific fascination, while Nadia's expression held something more like reverence. "The cycle begins anew," the professor murmured, echoing the voice Thalia had heard on Vega 9. Ahead lay the uncharted moon and whatever ancient truths awaited them there. Behind pursued those who would weaponize that truth, and between them, a love story begun millennia ago, waiting to be continued. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.